Hey, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'd like to bring you along for a speed run on what I have learned operating a large garden for the last 4 years. And hopefully I can impart some of that knowledge to you to help you navigate all the YouTube gardening rabbit holes. Say fab it all.
Hello. Go.
So this is my current garden. It's about a 1/4 acre. It was once an alfalfa field in a past life, but I've been improving it for the last few years to make it more productive. This has also been a trial by fire in larger gardening techniques. It's still what I would consider a small garden, but even though I am able to use my large John Deere tractor. I've been home gardening for the last 20 years with dabbling in some larger scale farming in my youth. My first garden was 10 times smaller than this garden, and I experimented with some pretty crazy ideas in that small garden. Although this garden has forced me to be more decisive in planning, soil preparation, management, and harvesting, I have been down many of the YouTube gardening rabbit holes. I have done no-till, hugel culture, conventional, chemical, organic, Jerry Baker, etc., etc. I have even done the orgonite thing, if you want to go down that hippy-dippy rabbit hole. This garden in this size has really helped me to understand a lot of those methods and tune my own method. You and your neighbor's gardens may share the same weather, but each garden is still its own ecosystem. If you would like to know what makes me an expert in all this, pulling sprinkler pipe out of a 40-acre wheat field in July. That is what gives me the right to speak on any subject I wish. I have purchased books on all sorts of techniques, studied different methods, and tried almost all of them. Something I have noticed on YouTube is the overwhelming amount of YouTubers in California. If I'm being honest, their tips and tricks are useless to most of us. I don't garden in a weather utopia. I actually have seasons, okay? I have frost dates to worry about, unusual weather patterns, occasional drought. So save me your, we have to be careful this January night. The forecast is saying that it might dip into the 60s garbage. I've got 6 to 7 months to get in and get out, so things need to be ready on time. So back on subject, I feel that the most important thing for anyone trying to get things to come out of the ground is soil health. The soil is the home of the plant. The soil should be alive. It should have all the amenities necessary to house that plant for the short time that it is on this earth, giving you the fruits of its labor. This is the backbone of every legitimate gardening method that I have researched. The focus on soil is usually different, but the desired outcomes are the same. Take, for example, hugel culture. I did a video on an orchard that I planted where I implemented this method in order to bring a barren plot of ground back to life. Check out the video here. I have attempted the no-till method with varying success, which I'll discuss later in this video. Both of these methods are vastly different in their approach, but are reaching for the same outcome: improving the life of the soil. If there is anything you should focus on, it is the soil. There are some great videos about the soil health and what to look for on the Soilworks LLC channel. This has been a great channel in helping me fine-tune my own personal methodology. I got the link in the description. So I have carried a theory about farming in general when I started deep diving into gardening. That is that most things that we do or buy for our gardens are only done to solve a current symptom. They don't cure the problem. Case in point, did you know that in large-scale operations, seed suppliers will coat seeds with all or most of the nutrients that that seed will need for germination and growth? This is due to the fact that it is cost prohibitive for a farmer to treat the entire field with what is necessary for the crop. I don't know what the overall effect this has on food supply, but I feel like it's a shortcoming in the world of farming that we may all be paying for. I can't really speak to the large-scale farming and how and why things are done at each operation, but this is where if you have the opportunity to improve your own soil, then it will pay off for you in the end. We'll come back to soil health. Your methodology of gardening is going to depend on what you're working with, both in terms of your garden itself, and what tools you have to work with. I am blessed to have a larger garden and the tools to tend to that garden. I don't have every tool that I'd like, but I am blessed to have available what I have. These tools dictate what method I'm going to use, and I'm going to repeat that method until I get into a rhythm. For example, I think that no-till gardening has its place, but for me, I don't have the matching tools. If you have the ability to gear up for a certain method, then good for you, but stick to it and find your rhythm. I don't have the necessary tools to do no-till gardening on this size of garden. Planting tools are different, and I don't have the time or patience to hand plant this size of garden. So the main tool I have available to me is a mulch layer. This is an implement that is pulled by a tractor that covers rows in a layer of plastic. A drip line is also placed under the plastic at the same time to provide water for the row. The plants are then planted through the plastic. Because I decided to use this as my main tool, it meant that I had to prepare the soil so the mulch layer can be used properly. This means I have to till the soil. Since I know that I'm going to till the soil and lay plastic mulch, then I can plant accordingly. This means that, and this is where the rhythm comes in, I have to till the garden in spring, usually between the end of April and middle of May. However, I am looking for the moisture level of the soil to be dry enough so that when I form the rows that it doesn't have large clumps in the soil that could rip the plastic or not give me an even soil bed under the plastic, which makes planting more difficult. This also means that the soil can't be too dry so that I don't harm the soil structure by overworking it. The mulch layer is a great tool, and I know that it's not a common tool to have, but I love using it, and the rhythm in my methodology improves each year. The first year I planted the garden, I ran into a problem. You can't plant rows directly next to each other. There has to be a space between the rows for the tractor. This is where the problem lies. That space between the rows, I can get down to as little as 3 feet. It is unused, and this becomes a primo place for weeds. The first year was difficult. I tried all sorts of things to keep the weeds down, but it was absolutely overwhelming. Then came the next phase of the following year. I decided to put down a weed barrier. This is a woven heavy fabric that's rolled out between the rows that prevents the weeds and makes for tending and harvesting so much easier. However, this created another problem. At least I was able to foresee this problem ahead of time. I realized that unrolling the fabric, while not all that difficult, I knew that when it came time to pull up the fabric at the end, it was not going to be easy. So in the next phase came the ground cover fabric recovery implement. This was a tool that I needed to create to continue with my chosen methodology and to keep myself from getting burned out. And you can check out the video on that tool here. Okay, so here was a tool that I wanted to use, the mulch layer, and I had a tiller. Finding a new problem, I adapted. I went with the weed barrier because I've always had a consistent rule in my garden: no chemicals. So that means I don't use herbicides like Roundup or anything like it, and I don't use chemical fertilizers like ammonium nitrate. I'm really trying to not just get better harvest, but I'm trying to improve the health of the garden so the garden works for me and provides a place for any beneficial microbes, insects, animals, and weeds. Yes, weeds. Weeds can be beneficial if you know what to look for. However, that is a whole nother subject, and I'm only covering methodology in my garden. So how it helps me is because, like a musician will memorize a song as it's written and practice that song over and over and over again to the point that the movements required to play that song become muscle memory. Then he can ad-lib and add his own flair to the song. So he can also hear when something is off. I try to be strict in my method so that I know what to expect at each season, and then I know if something is off. So it doesn't mean that I'm perfect or that I have set dates for this or that. It just means that I know what I'm going to do, I know what to expect from what I'm doing, and when I don't get the result, then I have a better chance of remedying the problem or adjusting it to this or that, and even knowing how to adapt to that change. I'm always focusing on the soil all year. So I planted winter rye a few weeks ago, and it's just now starting to pop up. So this is called a cover crop. It does two things. It keeps weeds from growing in the garden in the warmer days from end of harvest to spring planting, and it adds a huge amount of organic matter to the soil. Okay. Just before I till in the spring to prepare the soil for the plastic mulch layer, I will mow the winter rye down and till it in. However, this is not really a benefit for the current year. It does help water retention in the soil and things like that. The rye stalks will break down in the soil, but they won't really add much to the soil until future years. I don't know how necessary this is just yet, but I'm trying to get it into my rhythm so that I can observe changes in the soil, plants, and harvest. And right now I do this every other year. I have not done this enough as of yet to know the actual benefit, but if it's something that I feel is beneficial, and I haven't noticed any evidence either way, but I'm gonna keep doing it until I establish a baseline. So it takes about 40 pounds of seed to plant a garden of this size. I will seed on the higher recommended rate to both create a dense carpet of plants, since I'm not letting it go to... And the birds like a little snack after I sow. They too add to the garden. If that is what is necessary for the garden to get what it needs from them, then I feel that a few extra pounds of seed is worth it. I know that the tilling that I'm doing is negative for these microbes. They don't really like being pulled up and exposed to the sun, but I already mentioned why I don't use the no-till method. So I have to take that into account and balance the negative where possible. Another part of my method is that after I till and lay the plastic mulch, I wait. I give the soil some time to heal and breathe. This time varies depending on what is being planted, since frost dates and maturing times vary, but I like to give the soil at least 2 weeks to heal before planting. Again, another note in the symphony that I can listen for to know if something is not working. I really like to see at least one good storm front pass through. The change in barometric pressure is what pushes oxygen into the soil. I only use a few other fertilizers and amendments, if you will. Charcoal, azomite, usually every other year, fish emulsion, compost tea, and sugar. The charcoal comes from corn stalks and wood that I harvested, and I make it here. Azomite is a mineral that is a product that's produced in central Utah. It contains trace minerals that are supposed to improve plant health and supposedly taste of the fruit. It is somewhat expensive for a garden of this size, so I don't use it very often, because at the recommended rates I need like 100 pounds. Fish emulsion and compost tea are my go-to amendments. I use these throughout the growing season. I have an injection system that I attach to the drip line that is under the plastic that slowly injects this when I water. I do go through about 4 gallons of fish emulsion a year, and the compost tea, I have an almost endless supply of compost tea. I make a very rudimentary version from cow manure that I get from either our cow here or the organic dairy farm next door. I'd like to make a tea extractor to improve this, but that is more involved than I would like to get into at this time. So don't get yourself wrapped up into exacting standards. If you can't make tea, then just add manure to the soil in fall. It may not be the best method, but it is doing something, and getting caught up in the minutia of any method, it will burn you out. Practice the song with one hand until you get it down, and then add the other hand. Sugar is my new experimental amendment. It is supposed to directly improve the soil microbe health by feeding those microbes. Those microbes then in turn process the minerals in the soil, like the azomite, and make those minerals available to the plants. One way in which I verify this is measuring the plant sugars. However, it is not the sugar that you're adding to the soil that the plant is absorbing. It is sugar that the plant produces when it gets carbon from the soil that has been processed by the microbes. It's sort of a modified sugar. The microbes need carbon and oxygen, and the plant needs carbon and carbon dioxide. I also learned that if I can automate something to where I don't have to worry about it, then that allows me to focus on more than one thing. I added an automatic watering system onto the drip line. I can configure it for each row. That was an issue I ran into this last season. In previous years, I've always done 2 drip lines per row, and it was almost too much. So this last season, I only did 1, and this was actually insufficient. And I have really good drainage on my soil, so I don't really have to worry about overwatering. But what was happening is the line in the middle of the row was not extending out to the edges of the row, so everything on the outside was dry, but the middle was fine. So I was really struggling to get good germination from the seeds. But once everything was established, it really wasn't a problem. So now I've learned from here on out, I would rather have the double drip line and water less time than to max out the watering times just to get by. Some of the smaller tools that I've invested in that help me verify my method: a penetrometer. This tool is used to test compaction on the soil. It is used by simply pressing the tool into the ground and reading the gauge on the top as you press it into the soil. If the soil is too compacted, then the soil can't breathe and the microbes will not have sufficient oxygen to do their thing. Another tool is a Brix meter. I will take a leaf from a plant, crush it, and then place the liquid from the leaf on this lens. This is a whole rabbit hole of plant Brix levels that is actually fascinating to go down. If you want to check that out, it's plant Brix, B-R-I-X. This helps me to verify my method by telling me if the plant is receiving enough nutrient from the soil. So, and another tool is a pH meter. This is a simple tool that just reads the soil acid or alkaline levels. So this is important because what you are planning on planting may do better in certain pH levels. However, I have noticed that in my garden, I look to maintain a 7.5 pH level. This is an average, but I like to verify that I don't have a hot spot, if you will. I like to keep it constant because it's easy to work from an average baseline than to constantly chase an exact measurement for a specific area of the garden. I like to rotate my crops, so it would be more work to add lime to a small section for a year and then have to reverse that for the following year. I would rather get a few less tomatoes out of a plant and have it be healthy than constantly chase a number. Oh my gosh. The last tool I use is the EC meter. This is a measure of electrical conductivity of the soil. This is the first year I've used this, so I'm still trying to quantify the readings to the harvest. Supposedly it's a direct measurement of microbe activity. So I mentioned that I have a strict no chemical rule. This is only somewhat true. I use 1 chemical concoction for an herbicide. When I need to keep weeds down around the fence line or in between rows, I can either mechanically or manually remove them. The other option is a mixture of acetic acid and lemon juice or citric acid. This is a great organic mixture that is very effective as an herbicide and it's non-toxic. You can spray it all around your garden without worry about toxic chemicals or killing your garden. Just don't spray it on a windy day or get it on the plants. So it consists of a 95% water, 4% acetic acid, and 1% lemon juice. Acetic acid is just vinegar. I buy the 100% acetic acid on Amazon because it doesn't take very much to get to the 4% mark. Most vinegar you buy in the store is usually around a 5% dilution, so you're mostly buying water. So you just spray this on the weeds or plants that you want gone. In a few hours, they are gone. You do have to use this more than an industrial herbicide, but that's the price you pay for a more natural method. So hey, thanks for joining me as I rant about my garden. I'm hoping that this video is useful to you as you explore the world of gardening and to help you find your rhythm and not get bogged down in the details. There's a lot of information out there. There really is no right or wrong way. If you are focused on growing the biggest pumpkin in the world, then your methodology is going to be different than someone growing an acre of corn. Different tools, different timing, different expectations. My take is that everything's different for a reason. Every insect, every bird, every weed tells a different story. Maybe birds are eating from one tomato plant but not the other. Caterpillars are devouring one tomato plant but not the other. Yep. Each of that tells a story, and if you establish a method and a rhythm, then you can determine if that story is right and you can make changes without chasing your tail. So thanks for watching, and if you like that, check out my other gardening videos here. YouTube thinks you'll like the video on the screen, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Make that like. Oh yes. Somebody come on here and have it, so.